welcome to the last chapter in our Jazz 101 series. It's been a great journey. I hope you learned a lot about jazz in this whole series. Now, the last thing I want to leave you with are the most important things that you have to know to get your basics together. So what I've done is I've created kind of a workshop format with some of my students, and we're going to go through the basics for you again. You can never get enough of the basics, but another thing I want to leave you with is the importance of rhythmic study, structural study, and your ability to memorize tunes on a big level. The more you memorize tunes, the more you're going to be able to play in the jazz settings, and the more people are going to want to play with you. So let's get started. Let's go to our workshop section and check out what the guys have to ask. Hi friends, welcome to the next video. We are here in one of my drummers intensive days that I do all around the world, and I'm here with some great friends, some great drummers, local drummers from Mendoza, Argentina, to close out the Jazz 101 series. I'm very happy that you all stayed with us for this long, for the entire series, and we're doing something special for you, and kind of a free form question and answer type of thing. So A lot of readers have written me with questions about the series. So what I'm going to try to do is just everybody's going to cooperate with me a little bit here, and we're going to ask some questions about the jazz. So it's going to be in Spanish because I'm in Argentina at the moment. I will have a translation for you. Any questions about anything what I just played?
La técnica de plumeo en el bombo.
Oh.
Técnica de plumeo en el bombo para jazz.
Okay, so he's asking me about the feathering the bass drum. So if you remember in one of the past issues, the bass drum should be felt but not heard. So one of the techniques I use is just pedal control. Okay, and it's just move from your ankle like you do with the hi-hat. Okay, we have a video about that. And the main thing to remember is that it should be felt but not heard. So if you're playing the ride, a very simple exercise. Okay, and just move your foot as if you were playing quarter notes. And that's going to kind of help you achieve this feather effect. Now, finally, when you do the feathering, it's got to be so subtle that you can't hear it, so more like this. I'm sure that's not going to even come through in the video. It has to be a thing that's live. You're going to feel it when it's live. But the most important thing to remember is that used to provide a bedding for the bass player. So a lot of bass players don't like that nowadays, and you have to be really careful who you do that with. Although it has its purposes, maybe in a big band. One of my tricks is if you're like pumping a big band, and you feel that the tempo is slowing down or something weird's happening, and you want to like establish a quarter note, then you might want to put that in there just to give it an extra oomph, so it definitely has its purposes. You just have to be real careful with it. So that's what I use it for more than anything else. If I'm in a big band and I want to push the time a little, then I'll give them a little bit of that. Nobody will hear it, but it'll be implied and they can feel it. So it's an interesting thing. Okay. Anything else? Cualquier otro.
¿Cómo haces para no tocar ¿cómo decirlo? Jazz así de modo tradicional, cuadrado en cierta forma, y más melódicamente como lo hiciste recién?
So the question is how do you play like less square and have it sound more melodic like we just did here in the example? So the answer to that is to always use cycles. So the 3-bar cycle with augmentation and diminution. All the rhythmic concepts that we talked about, groups of 5, 7, 9, all that stuff makes it sound really round and not square. Okay, so remember again, this is an example of square. Okay, cuadrado va a sonar así. 1, 2, 3, 4. And round is going to be using all the concepts that we talked about, especially the 3-bar cycle. Okay, so a more round sound using the 3-bar cycle would be like this. At that tempo, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All that vocabulary is based on the 3-bar cycle. So I think the secret to jazz is always the 3-bar cycle and playing from a rhythmic standpoint and not one of independence, you know. So, ¿se entiende?
Perfecto.
Okay. What else?
¿Cómo puedo hacer para integrar el bombo o con qué criterio integro el bombo al comping?
Okay. Yeah. So the question is, how do you integrate the bass drum in your comping? So one of the first things that I was showed was basically to use the bass drum as a way to mark the structure. Okay. So for example, on the and the 4 of the 8th bar or the 4th bar, you know, you do a little kick, and then that's one, like the first thing you should know. So so 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay. Now the next issue is when you're using the 3-bar cycle phrasing, right? You can do it on different voices. You know, first you have to practice it, you know, on the bass drum, okay, on the snare, on the different voices, so that eventually it comes out naturally. So if you want to use it on the bass drum, it'll just be like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay. Next, you start to mix it up. For example, you can do 2 on the bass drum, 1 on the snare. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, always marking the structure at the end. So, and then you could do obviously 2 on the bass drum, 2 on the snare, or 3 on the snare, 1 on the bass drum, until eventually you can do anything, anywhere, and it's a part of your vocabulary. Now, not only with the 3-bar cycle, but with 5s and 7s and 9s as well. So you always work within structure, always work within a musical structure, and use rhythm as your base for interpretation, for comping, soloing, and everything else. And I think the more you do that, the more people are going to like playing with you. Not so much if you just keep, you know, real square phrasing. The more you're sound free with all the instruments, actually, when you're comping, the more it's going to be open for a soloist to feed off of what you're doing. Does that answer? Okay. What else?
No, por ahí cómo haces para con el hi-hat, con el pie ir combinando con el ride, o sea, ¿es solamente la cuenta o por ahí vas variándolo?
So the question is, how do I basically combine the hi-hat with the ride cymbal? So what I'm doing is, all the vocabulary you're hearing is coming off the ride and spilling onto the rest of the kit, okay? So the time in jazz, remember, it's always generated from the top, you know, on the instrument. The time is obviously generated from the stomach, emanate the time. I think we talked about that before. But when I combine the hi-hat, it's usually with the big phrase that the ride cymbal is doing. So if I'm doing this type of a phrase, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? I'll outline that with the hi-hat. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So everything that is spilling from here onto the kit, you can combine with the hi-hat or any voice. But that's my main concept for integrating the hi-hats. Okay, and in reality, I mean, it's I'm integrating with all the kit spilling from this ride cymbal phrasing. Now there are a couple of things that I do that are just you know, typical licks that every jazz drummer does. For example, this. Right? Every jazz drummer does that. That type of thing. And then this other phrase, which is very common as well, ride cymbal would be. And depending on the tempo, you know, that sounds good. How you arrange that on the kit. So if you're saying, if you're doing a faster tempo, you kind of have to take a different cyclic approach, you know. That's that lick. And then, you know, a bunch of other things, groups of 5 and 7, you do. Little subtle things like that are a nice way to integrate the hi-hat, but always come from a rhythmic standpoint and always.
¿Podrías mostrar como los feels o tricks of the trade, así como esenciales para los que estamos como metiéndonos a este mundo del jazz?
Okay, the question is, what are the essential tricks of the trade when you're first getting into jazz? What phrasing-wise you mean, or in general the music?
En general.
Well, I think one of the main issues is always knowing songs. So you have to know like 200 songs, you know. You have to like memorize the music and let it be a part of you, a part of your life. You know, that's something that we don't talk about a whole lot, but you know, one of the best things you can do is like memorize tunes, or at least be familiar with them. And a lot of tunes have the same structure, so many of them are not that hard to memorize. And you know, that's a big trick of the trade as far as being a musician, like a working musician. Another little trick, you know, is I would say, I don't know if it's a trick, but it's something of the trade, you know, is to have your gear in order. To have a really good jazz sound, you need to have that jazz sound, and it starts, you know, with your gear. Another thing is to how to hit the stuff properly. You know, you can't take the same approach you do in funk or rock when you're trying to play, you know, jazz. It's a little bit different in articulation and touch and feel, you know, all depending, of course, on the situation. But touch and feel, dynamics, all those types of things are, let's say, tricks of the trade that a lot of times you only get by like watching jazz drummers like really close up on gigs, you know, gig after gig, watching hundreds of gigs and seeing everything they do, you know. So it's you know, jazz, like we said before, a lot of it is kind of handed down through, let's say, generations of drummers. A lot of things you can't learn from a book. You know, you have to like have someone show you, and it's just, you know, no other way around that. You can play all the independence exercises you want out of a book, but how does it really sound? You know, you got to hang, you got to see gigs live, you have to live kind of the jazz life, let's say. Great. Buenas preguntas, muy buenas preguntas. ¿Alguna otra?
Ahora que estamos hablando de lo estilístico y lo musical, definitivamente hay como un enfoque diferente en el sonido, en este género. ¿Podrías decir como darnos dirección sobre afinación en este estilo?
De la batería. Okay, the question is about tuning for jazz drums. So, you know, the traditional drums the jazz sound is cranked up pretty high. But these days, you know, I mean, if you check out Steve Gadd on the Friends album, or I mean, there's kind of maybe no kind of set rules, you know, as far as tuning goes, but it also depends on like who you're playing with and what the situation is. So if it's a real traditional kind of jazz situation, you kind of need the right size drums to sound, let's say, authentic, in an authentic way. Like I said, there's no real like rules, that says you have to tune it to a certain note or something like that. But the sound is definitely something that you should consider depending on who you're playing with. Always depends on who you're playing with and what the situation is. Yeah. Especially of importance, I think, is the bass drum size. Obviously, Tony Williams played huge drums, and it sounded incredible, awesome, But that's that's his voice, If you want to break the rules, I think you kind of have to know the rules first, or else, it's hard to develop your own voice. If you have no idea what the sound of jazz is like, then it's kind of like putting the cake in front of the coffee, or the cart in front of the wheel, the donkey in front of the cart, whatever the saying you want to apply to it. But that's the situation. As far as tuning goes, just make sure who you're playing with, and even ask the artist, what kind of tuning you like, and then you have your own sound of the tuning you like, and go from there. It's really hard to say for sure you have to have one way, Good question though. What else?
Hablando un poco del sonido, la mayoría del jazz, del sonido del jazz, pasa por el plato, por el ride. ¿Qué recomendaciones das al momento de comprar un plato de jazz? ¿Qué sonido buscar? Como para no gastar dinero de más.
Claro.
O
Okay.
direccionado.
Yeah, the question is, how do you choose a proper ride cymbal for jazz? A lot of it has to do with the situation you're in. So my jazz rides here are designed for small group, for especially small group with very delicate instruments. I play these in big bands as well, but it comes down to a matter of taste of the artist you're working with. But in general, there's a standard jazz sound, like there is a jazz sound for the drums that's kind of standard. The most modern, like say the contemporary sound, is like my jazz rides. It's like a dark, kind of dry, kind of super moody sound, super colorful and even musky, let's say, if that's can be used as a definition. And what I have here in this setup is definitely these two cymbals have functions. Like this one is great for slow to medium tempos because it's a little bit wider sound, it's a softer sound, and this is a little bit more, you can hear the stick more on this one's a little drier. So I use this for higher tempos, right, and medium to slow tempos. I use this one a lot, although this is fine too. So there is a huge amount of personal taste in this choice, but eventually you do have to research a little and see who you're playing with again. If I were playing with a piano player that has $100,000 piano, on a beautiful stage, I wouldn't take like a rock ride, I'd take something fitting in that situation. So, yeah, that's the answer.
Que a modo de consejo, ¿qué aconsejas a la hora de encarar este estilo? ¿Cómo el encare, digamos? ¿Cómo lo encaramos para los que nunca han visto o los que estamos iniciándonos en este estilo?
Okay, the question is, how do you start out in this style. If you've never seen like jazz drummer or don't have in your town, access to jazz music, how do you start? The best thing to do is just to start, the easiest route. Now you have YouTube. You have YouTube. You can do a lot of research on YouTube. But, the way we did it back in the day is just have to start listening to music. Listen to the music and kind of become familiar with the sound itself, the aesthetics, the moods, the colors of the music. That's super important. If you have that as a starting base, then you're kind of on your way in the jazz world. You can always part from a standpoint of music, like not so much a consumer, like a passive listener, but active listener, which is different. And you kind of have to live the jazz experience somehow. So the easiest way to do it is obviously now YouTube. We didn't have that when I was a kid. We only had records, and obviously I could go at that time. There were so many jazz clubs in my town in New York and in LA that I could go every night to see a jazz drummer. But lacking that, you have to immerse yourself in the music, and as much as possible listen, and of course fine listening, like I said, try to detect the colors and the moods and the textures in the music, which is so subtle, is super subtle. So if you like I said before, if you base yourself on the music, coming always from the music, you'll be on your way. Right. ¿Entiendes?
¿Sí?
Okay.
Después, por ejemplo, ¿qué baterista fue el que más te influyó en el género a vos y hasta en qué sentido, o sea, lo pudiste... ¿Qué baterista te influyó más?
Okay, the question is, who was my biggest influence in jazz? And I would have to say it was Roy McCurdy, because he was the first like real jazz drummer that I saw up close. I was like 13 years old or 14 years old, and I went to a concert, and it was an outdoor concert, and they were playing in a gazebo, and I was right behind Roy, like right here, like I was like right here, the gazebo, and I was like watching Roy that close. It was unbelievable, right? And that ever since then I was completely fascinated with Roy's playing and his vibe, and I started taking lessons from him, and he like initiated my journey into jazz. So if I would have to say who was the most influential on me, it would be Roy McCurdy. He played with Cannonball Adderley, he's got an impressive, completely unbelievable amount of people he's that he's played with, and he's amazing player and person and teacher. So I would have to say that it's Roy. Then after Roy started telling me, listen to this guy, and then other friends would turn me on to drummers, and little by little, I started getting to hear a whole bunch of other drummers. So that's kind of the way, word of mouth. But if I have to say it's one guy, it's Roy McCurdy. In jazz, we ride on the shoulders of giants. Those who came before us are the ones that came up with this music. And to play this music is a tribute to music, to them, to drumming, and what it means to be a human being. I hope you have enjoyed this series, and I look forward to bringing you my next workshops. See you soon.